Okay guys, it's going to be a slightly different video. I don't normally cover games or mods on the channel, but this is pretty special. So this is very early work. This is the original Crysis, not the remaster, with a VR support mod. Now this obviously hasn't got motion controls as yet. It is either a normal Xbox controller or mouse and keyboard, but it is surprisingly comfortable because of the way the modder has made the controls work relative to your head. It doesn't actually take your head with you. So I'm going to basically leave up all the stats on my screen. I will give you fair warning. I'm being an idiot at 150% render resolution on Neo Free Link, so it's a DisplayPort cable. It doesn't have any overhead with the compression or encoding. And it will still chug back those wattage. So what I'm going to do is just cover the mod briefly. Basically, it's super simple to install. I'll link the GitHub in the video description. You simply run the exe it gives you. It's not a signed exe, so you will need to just allow that. But that will basically ask you to point towards the Crysis install directory. If you've got that on Steam, you can just easily find out by right-clicking the game and browse local files. So once you've done that, basically run the exe and it will populate the mod into the install directory, and that gives you a bat file that basically launches VR mode. So you can create a shortcut onto your desktop and basically go from there. So once you run the bat file, you do want SteamVR started first. If you're messing with SteamVR global resolution, which is the bottom left corner that I've got here, if you change that, you need to restart SteamVR. Because this isn't a VR app, you won't be able to do per application settings. So yeah, if you need to run 100 or even under that, you need to change that and restart SteamVR before you actually think any of those changes are going to happen on your screen. So once you're up and running, basically run the bat file. It'll automatically enable the mod. You will see it in SteamVR. I've got the SteamVR mirror window open here, so you can see I've got my Pico Neo free link. You do need to recenter yourself. That is the only sort of use the motion controls have. Just get in a seated position and then obviously recenter yourself, and that's you sorted relative to your player positions, because again this is 6th head movement but no motion controls. So yeah, the mod is already set up. It defaulted me anyway. It might be different to others. 800 by 600, which is the top left window in the recording, and what that allows is basically the mouse can go side to side. When you get to the edges, it will then rotate you, much like it would if you were using smooth turning on your VR controllers. Going up and down does not mess with your vision, thankfully. That's a really cool inclusion, because that would pretty much make your motion sick if you're going to go up and down. So if you need to look up and down, it's quite literally physically looking up and down. So I would not advise messing with any of these settings. Leave this at 800 by 600. Don't mess with any of this stuff. Anti-analyzing, I'm not going to touch this because then it puts the game into a full screen mode for whatever reason, and it doesn't make a difference. I will cover this in a second once I get into the game. Advanced, it sets everything to high. I've changed object qualities to very high, but that's only because once you're in game, it won't let you change this option if you set everything to very high here. So leave these settings alone, especially if you are going to super sample like me. You are going to need the hardware to do that. So 100% SteamVR render and Neo Free Link DisplayPort, it ran this no problem at 90 FPS with all the high settings. Going to very high is diminishing returns, because it actually it makes the details in the vegetation finer, but because you haven't got the super sampling, you end up actually worse off with more aliasing, just because of the transparency effects in the distance. So I would just honestly advise just leaving all of these settings as they are, or even if you need to lower them, obviously lower them. But if I jump into the game here, I'll be able to just cover a few more things I've noticed on this mod. I'm not going to start from the scratch. I'll just load one back maybe. I don't know where this is going to end up putting me. I don't want to load into a firefight. But yeah, you can select a console commands to do cutscenes in 2D as well, because it will give you 6th movement in your head for the actual. I'll tighten my heads up a bit. For the cutscenes as well, so I can move around. So I could probably walk around my room if I really needed to, but That's the whole point of recentering yourself with Steam VR, because this puts you in the right place, so your shoulders match up when you're playing on a mouse and keyboard, which is kind of cool. The movement left and right, like I said, when you get to the edges, it will then turn you. That's not really disjointing. I don't really mind that at all. I'm just showing obviously performance at the moment. Start of the game with 150% is absolutely fine. Once you start getting to vegetation, if you see the flare, or if I end up doing a flashlight, and again I will say that the overlays in VR like this work really well. The stereoscopic depth is perfect. There's no cross eyes to read any of this. This is really cool. And you can see my frame rate is absolutely tanking. I can feel that in the headset as well. So again, 100% near for Link DisplayPort cable with a 12700K and 3080 Ti. That is fine. That's 90 FPS, no problem. I will cover the vegetation thing. So this is high settings and it is super sampled. So if I get rid of my flashlight, what I can do is I'm going to focus on the trees up here. So high details, obviously the textures are not as finely detailed. So when you actually go to very high, not only do you get extra effects, but it's obviously making the geometry details more fine and better transparency and all the rest of it. So what happens when I change this is not only does my frame rate absolutely tank, but because the details are finer, it's not got any anti-aliasing, and the render resolution still isn't enough for high details like that. So it honestly makes no sense to go very high settings, even when you're super sampled. And the other reason I say that is I can show it from here once I get out into this area. So again, very high settings, you do get your famous God rays through the trees and stuff. Like the lighting is really cool. It looks amazing. With no compression, I can see to the other side of the island. But this is the thing you might notice in the game mirror, or the Steam VR mirror, I should say. I can see the dude on the floor, but I can't see all of these barrels and stuff. So the mod is quite clearly culling the geometry level of detail. So I can see like the roof panels changing as I go closer, and that is completely fair. That's gonna have to be expected because Crysis is just Crysis. So that makes no odds if you max out your settings, so I wouldn't chase trying to solve that pop-in. Again, you can't have everything. With how Crysis is, it's super CPU single-threaded, so you're going to need a strong CPU anyway, not only to do Crysis, but also drive those frames at 90 frames if you're aiming for that target frame rate. I don't know what we're looking like now. It is a bit smoother. It's not quite 90, but again, we're playable. There is no point me having 150% super sampling on the DisplayPort cable, especially when the geometry detail is popping in and out like that. So for me to solve this and get back 90 frames, I need to change my Steam VR render resolution to 100 and restart Steam VR. I won't do that in this video, but that is just something to be aware of if you're messing around with this mod. But apart from that, I mean, the playability, I mean, I can get motion sick on a bad port, especially VR mods. This isn't flashing my eyes like the GTA mod, like Luke Ross stuff. I believe it's Luke Ross anyway, I might have got that wrong. But the stereo effect is really good. I'm not seeing any flashes between my eyes. It's super comfortable, even with the mouse and keyboard, and this is something that surprised me. That the movement is expected because I'm connected obviously with my hand. I've got that motion that my brain knows I'm going left, it knows I'm going right, if that makes sense. Going up and down, it's not going to mess with my vision. There's a slight bit of movement when I go down like this because it obviously animates the character body, but in all seriousness, being able to look around in 6DoF with perfect stereo, this is not anything like Vorpex or I'll wait until he shuts up. Not like Vorpex or any other sort of 2D to 3D mod I've seen before. This is like, well, essentially like the Half-Life port that you got. It's using the same sort of techniques, I think. So again, it's just the original Crysis. It's just awesome. I'm not going to play the game too much to basically show you, but being the original, it should hopefully give you some more leeway to run it. I mean, it's still going to need absolutely high-end hardware because I don't think it taxes the VRAM too hard. It's only using 4 gig or thereabouts of VRAM even at 150% super sampling. So that's not really the issue. It's just the brute force of rendering basically the game twice into a resolution that you set in Steam VR. So yeah, it's heavy. It's not so heavy on your CPU and VRAM and stuff like that. It just needs brute force GPU power in the typical Crysis days. But considering I used to play this on Pentium 4 and I was happy with 15 frames a second I was getting, going into VR like this, it's just magical. It's absolutely magical. I know this isn't running solid 90 at the minute, but yeah, when I change it back and it is 90, it just blows me away that it's even possible and how far VR's come and games have come in general. But this holds up. It holds up extremely well, to the point I would argue this is obviously, if you add the motion control to this is probably going to be the best looking VR game. Yeah, it's just awesome. I don't know if we can manually override the geometry level of detail, but to be honest, if it runs well, I'll just leave it alone. The only thing I've found so far, it's a bit weird. On 150% super sampling, I've actually got better aim, and I don't quite understand that. I mean, it might be able to show on the flashlight. I mean, that's not a really fair example. You have the white reticle for where your aim is, and I don't know what it is. It seems to have a little offset to lower the render resolution. So at 100, it feels a little off, but with how I'm playing now, if I aim down sights, I'm closing the wrong eye because I don't know how the game character is, but the aim feels a little better the higher the render resolution. I don't know whether that's just like a weird offset thing within the stereo sort of overlap, but yeah, it's playable. I'm not going to get into this firefight because I'm going to get my ass kicked when I'm not having frame rate like this and yeah, being stupid, but should have probably put it on easy. But yeah, if you haven't checked this out already, I definitely recommend it. I mean, you know how good Crysis looks. It looks absolutely stunning in VR. I would obviously, if you have got like a Quest 2 or Pico 4, good luck, because you're going to have encoding overhead on top of a maxed out GPU, and that's, as you can see in my my overlay. If I was to bring up hardware info or GPU Z or something like that and show you the actual power limit of my GPU, that 347 is actually power limited. So it doesn't matter that is the max voltage the CPU can do. It's actually restricting power. So if I had video encoding to do on top of this as well, such as streaming through sort of Quest 2 or Pico 4, I'm not going to have a very good time. So you're going to need to basically treat this like Crysis and look at your system specs. Even dropping to 100 for me, I'm still up near 340 watts, so it makes no odds. So yeah, for me, DisplayPort cable on this mod is just magical. Like it's just so clear. But obviously that's just something to be aware of if you are going to try this on a streaming headset. You need high render resolution. You don't necessarily need to mess with the game settings, but you're going to need a beefy GPU, and you're going to have to factor in that encoding is going to add more strain to the GPU, and as such, if you're already tapped out for your power, your experience is going to suffer. So do a balance. Again, mileage is going to vary. I don't know how CPU really affects this because it is super single threaded, so you need a strong CPU anyway. It doesn't touch all the cores at all, but the actual GPU utilization, again, even with a 3080 Ti and just 100% in near free link and then high settings in games, is still maxed out. So yeah, just be aware before you dive in. But yeah, once you're up and running, I mean, it's awesome. I'm not going to do like gameplay coverage as such, but I'm just giving you the heads up that this mod is absolutely awesome, and it's just Crysis. So if you want a stress test for your system, try run Crysis in VR at 90 frames a second. That is the new Crysis meme, I think, at this point. So cheers, guys. Have fun. The link is going to be in the description, and it is super easy to follow. So yeah, I would just advise checking it out and just easing it up. Get some overlays up on your screen so you can see what's happening, because Steam VR, in fact I will be able to show that here, Steam VR frame timing tool is not going to show you anything. So if I was looking at this graph, I'd go, wow, that's running extremely well. It's not anywhere near the 90 FPS limit, but that's not actually telling me anything at all. So don't go off that. You need to go off sort of overlays on your computer, basically to avoid the magical, oh, it seems like it's running okay. I'm super sensitive to VR. I can tell you this isn't 90 FPS right now, and I can't see my screen. So if I was to look up in the sky, that's probably 90 FPS. Probably. It's still got a few little hitches when I move around, but I don't know whether that's just the assets. But yeah, I would just take it careful and don't rush into it. If this does make you motion sick, I'm sorry. As I got a pretty strong VR stomach, but this seems absolutely fine for me. And I'm normally quite bad at sort of flat to VR mods, but I don't know whether it's just the way they've done the stereoscopic render and the motion control. So yeah, your head is independent. Your aim isn't messing with your vision, so it is quite comfortable to play. So yeah, check it out. Cheers guys, thanks for watching.